in his coma, and I don't remember nothing. But before I woke up, I felt like I was being pulled towards something. And I don't want to go back. And my wife told me I woke up at one point. I said, who am I? Where am I going?
What a question. Where am I going when I'm not doing a Sopranos podcast? Welcome to Cut to Black, a Sopranos Sit-Down. My name is Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every single episode of The Sopranos.
My name is Jakob Burrows, and I've seen 69 nice episodes of The Sopranos. This one, episode 4 of season 6, The Fleshy Part of the Thigh, I can't help but wonder who put this together, Jim.
This episode here was written by Diane Froloff and Andrew Schneider. I believe those are new names. They worked on Northern Exposure with the god himself, David Chase. This was also directed by Alan Taylor, who's a name we've heard before, and we will hear again, I believe. And I think we always bring this up. He's also like a Game of Thrones vet. He's one of those guys.
Who isn't these days? In the Sopranos world, they all worked on Mad Men and Game of Thrones, didn't they? All these good shows, same people made them all. Before we get any further, I suppose we should say, for everyone following along at home, sorry about the slight delay there. If you're on the podcast years in the future, it doesn't really matter, but we did have a slight summer holiday there that we didn't quite intend. Our schedules just were shit and didn't line up at all, and we were in I was in a different country, so it didn't work out, but we are back, and we will endeavor not to make such a large break again anytime soon.
Well, it's much like The Sopranos, you take breaks sometimes.
Whatever reason.
Yeah.
They waited, you waited for season 6, didn't you, at home? Yeah. If you watched originally, you waited a long time for The Sopranos, so this should be old hat to you, really. I do think we have... am I looking at... Yeah, so we do have a review I just wanted to shout out real quick here from Nick, who says, really enjoying this podcast, rewatching Sopranos as I do the late shift with my newborn, and then listening to this podcast at work to stay awake. Very enjoyable and interesting take on the show from two perspectives, one who's seen it and one who hasn't. Keep up the good work, gents. Thank you very much, Nick, for your review, and for everyone else who's been voicing their appreciation for what we do while we didn't give a fuck about you and went away for a while. But we're back, so it's fine.
Yes, we are back. And yes, wow. Have I missed Tony Soprano, the Sopranos family, Paulie, of course. It is, it's like a great wind carries me throughout my day. But then when I'm not watching The Sopranos, that wind feels like a little bit less. It's not as strong, if you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying. Let's get into this episode then. Our friend Tony, it's probably because of our break, but I'm like, he's been in this hospital forever. It's honestly probably mainly because I had to watch it twice, because I watched it because I thought we were going to do the show ages ago, and I had to watch it again now, and I'm like, he's still going on about this quote? But yeah, the episode does open with Paulie striding out of a shop. That's not really important, though. We have Tony still in the hospital. He's they're about to stitch him up. They're about to get him out of there. I feel like we're about to do a Hank Schrader-esque, like, I'm gonna walk with a limp for one episode and then I'm fine again. Or wait, no, sorry, he did the whole season, didn't he? We're gonna get the more of a regular television treatment here. He's gonna be fine, but they have lingered on it long enough where I feel it's, the injury feels consequential.
Yes, yeah, and just the fact that you'd have to sit in a hospital bed with an open wound for a while because that's how it heals or something or other. Like, it's just kind of gross. And like, even at the beginning, Tony's like sweating and he's in pain as they're cleaning up his wound. Yeah. He's kind of hitting the morphine button a bit. They're trying to tell him to settle down on that. I do want to call out because it is interesting the way it opens. We got a monster with scuba gear on, and it's a quick shot of Paulie quickly cutting to Tony, but it is that like a shorthand letting us know that this episode is about, how connected Tony and Paulie are, because, throughout where we're going, at least thus far, they both are like, who am I? Or, what kind of person am I? Or, they're both rethinking their lives, I guess. But I mean, we'll be getting into that.
Yeah, in his opening scene here, Tony like confides in his nurse that he's felt different ever since he woke up, and his thoughts keep running away with him. And I suppose like the amount of time we've spent on him recovering from this so far, it has like it's not just him getting physically better, or it's also like his where is his mind at? Like it lends more weight to the long dream sequences that we've had, because now we're in the real world, and especially at the end of the episode, I hope, I'm not sure, but I hope that this will have some sort of lasting effect on Tony, and that he won't just be back to exactly the same. Like he can still act the same, but like you can see a clear shift in his mind, and I'll be really interested to see how that pans out. But either way, that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, and then, well, Tony gets a dinosaur book, and as you know now, dinosaurs are birds. We see dinosaurs in the book, then we see birds, and of course, Tony and ducks. So, of course, dinosaurs are very important to Tony, right?
Right, of course. That is how that works. And it's kind of isn't it kind of a monster at the start there that looks a bit like a dinosaur too, like a scuba diving monster?
Oh yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
call.
It's all connected, man. This show's so deep. Yeah, he's like really excited about these dinosaurs. And I don't know. I think that's pretty much it for that scene, right?
Well, I mean, plus, as Mr. Schwinn says, everything is all connected. It's everything's the same, but we'll get there. Then we have Barone Sanitation. We did discuss, and again, like we've mentioned, we've been on a break here, so we did discuss in the previous episode. They do mention that the owner of Barone Sanitation did pass away. So now we see his son. Now, this is a little puzzling because sometimes people don't know who Tony Soprano is, and sometimes people are like, "Oh my God, that's Tony Soprano!" Like because he's on the news or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's a little far fetched that he's like Anthony Soprano. I got this guy Anthony Soprano on the books. I don't know who this is. And then we see it's hilarious when we get to see the Polly's like employee of the month picture or whatever it is.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, Tony Soprano." Yeah, I get it now. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just to show that this guy doesn't quite understand what his family's mixed up in. And but I don't know, it's very naive.
Yeah, I didn't react that way, really, because I kind of felt like a lot of people don't know what's going on in the news anyway, although he has grown up in that area. I mean, he should know better, but I think because we have the mother later going like, please, we kept him separate from all of this. We didn't want him to know what was going on. That's why I can believe it, like, because he's obviously never been involved in the business. He just wants to get rid of it. So I didn't have that reaction, but I can certainly see where you're coming from. We have seen this guy Jason Barone before, haven't we? Or is he new? I didn't want to Google it in case I found out when he dies or whatever.
I don't know if we've seen him before.
Okay.
We may have, but I don't think so. I think this might be the first time.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what do we have after that, Jim? We have more of Tony in the hospital bed, blaming the quote there on Janice, who says, "No, I didn't put this up." And it's funny that this has become an important thing to Tony. Of course it has.
Yeah, it's like staring him in the face, and people are commenting on it. It's an important thing. And in the Sopranos session, Alan Sepinwall does describe, I think I might have brought this up already, but he does describe it as like a fancy way of saying "poor you," which I guess is kind of nice. Although when he brought that up to David Chase is like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
All right. Of course. So we have this scene, but I feel that it gets a lot more fun when Janice's old fling comes in with like their protest sign that says "Womb is God's," and they're there for some idiotic religious reason. No offense, everybody. And they're trying to get the job back as someone who refused to sell pills or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just a fun way to reintroduce some religion here.
Well, it's interesting because that is something that, happened again not too long ago with someone refusing to, I forget if it was like a morning after pill or it was something to do with healthcare on abortions. But, it's a cycle. Like this is stuff, at least here in America, it's constantly the push and pull. He does have a Terry Schiavo shirt, which was a big thing at the time, like in '05. She was kind of like an invalid, or she was in I forget if she was in like a coma or kind of brain dead. And it was this big discussion on, whether she should be euthanized or, she was she was in a irreversible, persistent vegetative state. And it was the discussion of like, is it harming this person by keeping them alive with machines? So weird little call out there, kind of selling the time and place. Very fun to see this character again. And then the pastor guy or whatever he is that comes in, I feel like he's perfectly cast because he has like crazy face.
Yeah.
Like he just kind of looks a little off. And I don't know if that's just naturally how he looks or if he's somehow really getting into this part, but it works perfectly.
Yeah, Pastor Bob's great because I feel like Tony's trying to find an explanation. Like he's even asking his nurse, like, "What's up? Why do I feel different?" He wants an answer from somewhere that doesn't just involve dinosaurs. So, Pastor Bob is ready to step in, bottom feeding, as they say, just wandering the hospital trying to convert people because when they're in that state, it's the best time for it.
Yeah.
So they do some quick prayers there just because he's going into surgery. And, there's been clinical studies, Carmilla says, and all. So yeah, I do like Pastor Bob because he, in a way, in this first scene, even with the crazy eyes, he kind of represents someone who has or seems to have a bit of authority and a bit of like, I will tell you what's up. And he says, maybe because Tony says, oh, I deal all this with my local priest or whatever. And Pastor Bob says, well, God doesn't want you to love him through intermediaries, just love him directly. And it's great that that's in such contrast to him later on when he's like, oh, I want you to come to our church. And also, as long as we remember that evolution is Satan's plan and all, like totally reversing on what he's saying here. But I can see how it's a little bit attractive to Tony to the point where like he does the proper amen after the prayer, even if he thinks it's a bit silly. Later, when the pastor shows up, he welcomes him and all, but then he sort of when the pastor reveals like, oh, this is my agenda, that's when Tony's like, all right, I get you, I get this is humanity again. I understand this. There's nothing bigger than that going on here.
Well, it is. It's running right up to the line of like a farce almost, the way people just keep walking into Tony's life now at this moment when he's in the hospital and kind of having differing spiritual opinions and advice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very entrenched and tied into the coma dreams, but it all works. And I love the whole thing with Viagra because I'm with Carmilla. Like, I think Tony's fucking around, but Tony's like, I'm not fucking around. Like, I don't know really how to read from that because it does seem like he's being a wise ass, and Carmilla says that, and he's just like, what do you mean? But I kind of believe that he is when he says, what do you mean, that he was like legit asking about Viagra, and the timing of when he goes, and listen up because this concerns you too.
Yes.
Carmilla is perfect, like Gandolfini, like really nailing that line.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and it ends with like, what I do. So yeah, we have a quick surgery scene then where they do stitch him up, and the doctor makes a joke like, "My God, I found Jimmy Hoffa."
Yeah.
Funny stuff.
Yeah.
We move on to have again more people kind of wandering in there. Meadow reading from the dinosaur book. Jason Barone shows up with Polly, and he gets a talking to here. They sort of lay it out for him, like, don't you go and try to sell now. We want to take care of you. We don't want to see you get hurt. So it's interesting here what's going on. Obviously, we know where it ends up. Do they not want him to sell at all, or what are they talking? What do you think their goal is here?
Yeah, I think they either don't want him to sell at all, or at the very least, to one of their guys. Because much like who we see, what is it, like Chinelli or whatever later in the episode, that's basically one of Johnny Sack's guys.
Yeah.
But I think they would probably prefer, yeah, don't sell at all because they're running business as usual. Or I think Tony does mention, let me talk to a few people, but there's still the veneer of niceness here at this point. There's still the polite, like, wait till I get out of here. We'll go over the numbers. And I think Paul even drops some like business lingo, like, do you even know, return after capital and stuff like that. So yeah, it's the classic mob guy where they're being nice, but if you understand the situation, like he still doesn't understand the situation, so he's not reading that. Yeah, they're being nice, but they're also saying like, hey, this is going to be bad for you.
If they hadn't been so nice, it probably would have worked out better for this guy, right? Because if they were like, if you sell now, we're going to break your legs, he wouldn't have tried to sell. He wouldn't have gotten himself in that tricky situation, right? Or
Kind of.
would the other crew have tried to take over those routes anyway? I don't know.
No. I feel like again, this is going back to like he's so naive. Like he should understand. He should be able to read the room here. But I guess what? He's a ski instructor. He's been shielded by his parents, so he doesn't get it. But he should understand what's happening.
Yeah. So time to get the B plot rolling here. We have Polly showing up at a convent, I suppose.
Yeah.
Really nice place, with nuns outside, trimming the grass. And so we all know what happens in this scene. Polly finds out that the person he thought was his aunt is actually his mother. This is so unbelievably common. It's the only thing I would say is more common is when people find out that someone they think is their mother is actually their grandmother, and the person they think is their older sister is actually their mother. Going back, I mean, in the UK, it was extremely common. I don't know about the US, but just like that's a thing that happens a lot. It is very much believable to me. How did you feel about this development?
I'm actually kind of surprised for you to say how common it is, but yeah, I guess I mean you're also speaking from a place of authority.
I
You
do
have
work for a genealogy company that, yeah. So, yeah, let me not going into specifics. Just trust me on this. It happens.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this storyline. Because I love that random's not the right way to describe it, but it's such an interesting thing to put with Polly Walnuts here.
Yes.
And the way we know him, and it really is. It's like something I would never think of, but it fully is this character being like, my life is a lie. Because what we know about Paulie, besides him being kind of like a wise ass who's like super cheap and selfish, we know he loves his mother. And that's like the main thing. Like he doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have kids. He takes care of his mom. And that's like an important thing to him. And for something like this to happen, it truly does put him in a like, oh my God, my life is a lie. What now? So I really like it. It did seem kind of out of nowhere, but you saying that it's actually pretty common, that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, it's like his mother is the only thing he loves, really. I mean,
Yeah.
he doesn't even have the painting anymore, right? So, so he doesn't have anything left in his life that he cares about. So not surprisingly, this is a big upheaval for him. It is great how, I mean, jumping ahead, this is obviously very tumultuous for him. And then at the end, I do love the thing where he's seen Jason Barone and the love that his mother has for him, and how that, it makes him very emotional in the moment. But then later, he wants to take that away from Jason. He wants to punish Jason for being loved by his mother,
Yeah.
which is such a great move. I don't know. I just love it because he doesn't really need those 4,000 a month. Like, it's not his to take or claim, but like it's really just motivated by him
But
going fuck this.
it's also the cost to keep his ma in Green Grove. Because he does bring that up when he's talking to Tony, like $4,000 a month for that nursing home. So I feel like Tony gets through to him, because what Tony says is very very reasonable. Like, I know we're jumping around, but like towards the end here, when Tony's like, she's still like, maybe she's not biologically your mother, but she's still your mother. Like, she still loves Paulie. And what Tony brings up, like all the times that she was still there for him. So I feel like that. I feel like that does get through to him, and I think he's gonna keep her there. But yeah, he's gonna make Barone fit the bill, or fill the bill. And I'm not even speaking on this from like an authority, because I don't remember if that's what happens or not. Even though I have seen all the episodes, it's been a long time. But I do think it's not a coincidence that he asked for $4,000 a month.
That's great. I really like that, because he's lashing out, but then, like you said, he's probably going to use that to keep his mother there. But then it's like Jason Barone is paying a tax on being loved by his mother.
Yeah.
And like Paulie's mother just died too. He just found out like at the last possible moment, didn't have a chance to process it. So he's in such a bad way that he doesn't even go to the funeral, and he just is full of hate and everything. So I would love if there's an extra layer there where he also keeps his foster mother in Green, or aunt in Green Grove. That would be great.
Yeah, then we have the scene where they're kind of making statements on American healthcare here, where the lady comes in, the attractive woman comes in to kind of, I mean, she looks like she's maybe a doctor or something. And I love Tony's attitude shift, where he's kind of starting out like a little flirty. And then once you realize like she works for the insurance company, and they're kind of crunching the old numbers to see if it's worth keeping him here in the hospital, because they got to free a bed up and get the next person in, and keep the bill from getting too high. They mentioned the wallet biopsy, where they check to make sure he has insurance, otherwise they'll dump him off at a shittier hospital. And he calls her a cunt. I forget his exact phrasing, but he's like, "Get out of my room, you sick cunt," or something like that.
Yes. I think this is mainly to increase the urgency of him like holding on to Barone Sanitation, so he has like healthcare through that. Is that the main purpose of this, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because that he does start bringing that up between the W-2 and the healthcare he gets from his
what's a W-2?
That's like it's basically a tax form that says you make money from a legit job. So, with the way these guys operate, they have money all the time, and to at least show the reason why he could have a house that he has or the car that he has, it has to look like he's getting it from a legit source of income. And that's why he has a job in title only that he doesn't have to show up in, because it basically hides him from the feds.
I think there's two things with Tony, where at the end of the episode, the show kind of wants to show him being more zen and letting go of things after his discussions about everything being part of a great thing, and there not being a dichotomy of good and evil, and they're all fighting is an illusion, and all this stuff, like all that philosophy, and it sort of lodges in his brain together with his recent experiences. So they have this where he can eventually, after being so enraged that he throws up in a later scene, there's a big contrast between that and him agreeing to the deal that's presented to him. And then there's also this bit about the wallet biopsy, and like out of spite and anger towards like the system, even though he operates outside the system and like steals money, he's still so angry at the system that he wants like this ambulance worker to give him money, because just cause. So that sort of gives him another thing that he can let go of later in the episode to show that he's a bit more chilled out. So that's also kind of introduced here.
Yeah, well, and also even going back to the pilot, one of the first scams that we see Tony come up with is, they run that guy over outside of an HMO, like a healthcare place, and then he gets an MRI because he's passing out, and he's like, "We can do these phony MRIs and build the insurance companies and steal all this money." So it's like another way to tie it in.
Yes. It's a great point. So he's always scamming the system, but he's still so disgusted by what she does, even though he literally goes around, well, not himself, he has people for that, but like go around and threaten people and hurt people and get them to give him money. Like, he's not really he doesn't have the moral high ground, but he wants to anyway. It's all part of Tony and the many layers of his brain.
Yes, yeah. Because then from there, let me see, what do we have after that? Oh yeah, there's the rapper,
Yeah.
or even before that.
No, X-Lax, uh,
Yeah,
laxative. Tony's sort of going for a walk and kind of overhears this rapper sort of weeping and like being all upset about the 7 caps he caught, which I would say is quite reasonable.
yeah,
But they're sort of pointing out how this is actually good for your career, and then. There's another guy who X-Lax was supposed to produce his album or whatever. But that's not going to happen now. So Bobby gives him a alternative solution to give him some more cred. I'm sort of jumping ahead a little bit there, but I do like that Bobby's there. Like, are you an artist? My son would know, like, and so on.
Well, yeah, because it's really funny when the guy's crying and he's like, "It really hurts, man." And he's like, he's like, "I'm gonna lose my thumb," and that'd be horrible.
Yeah.
But and then the manager, whoever it is that he's speaking to, like you mentioned, he's like, "Yeah, well, this is actually really good for you. It helps your cred," which has been a problem since you had a job for so long. It's a funny little line, like, because it's weird because it feels like it does make sense, like. But it also still feels like obviously the Sopranos writing room doesn't quite get hip hop, so there's definitely this disconnect. There's definitely this disconnect where it kind of feels kind of legit, but it's got this disconnect. And even going back to what was it, like Massive DJ or whatever his name was, that was like working with Adriana and then had an issue with Hesh. But yeah, and Bobby's kind of coming off of. Tony had told him earlier in this episode when him and Janice were in there, and Bobby like apologized again about the Uncle June situation, and Tony's like, you can't be hiding behind this brother-in-law shit much longer. So I do feel like at least Bobby's trying to take some initiative here. And the other rapper that Bobby's working with is played by Tretch from Naughty by Nature. I don't know if you're familiar with the Naughty by Nature, but that is the guy from there.
Okay. Do they have any hot tracks?
OPP?
Okay. I have heard OPP on Jim and Them at jimandthem.com.
That's the guy. That's the guy right there.
All right. Well, cool. The guy who got shot in the fleshy part of the thigh, he's from OPP?
Yes.
Cool.
I do love, too, when he's just kind of writing some raps. Like, it's not even that great. And then Bobby's like, are you writing a song? I always wondered how that happened. I always wanted to see that happen.
Yep. You do the rhymes, Bobby. That's how it happens. Very dramatic scene coming up next where Paulie goes to confront his quote-unquote mother, who denies it all at first, understandably. Now, she's always had a personality that, like, no one in Green Grove gets along with her, and it's kind of been clear why. Like, she's been, like, a kind of annoying person as well. So imagine loving someone unconditionally and then figuring out that they stabbed you in the back like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of see where Paulie's coming from, but she did always love Paulie. She's she's not like Tony's mother, which is pointed out later as well. But yeah, you got to feel for Paulie here.
Yeah, poor Paulie. I do love the actress that plays his ma or his aunt now, because I think actually all the like elder actresses or actors on the show are great. Because even going back to his biological mother in her scene, but they play the perfect like kind of aloof like old person that doesn't quite get what's going on, but is in the moment. And I feel for Paulie, but I feel for her.
Yeah.
Then we have kind of back to Bobby and the rapper. He's out smoking a cigar and he pitches this idea. It's interesting. I mean, I guess it's kind of obvious, but it's interesting because Tony's the one that overhears the stuff about this adding more cred, but then Bobby's the one that hatches this plan. But maybe we're not giving Bobby enough credit for how smart he is.
Well, his son told him. I think he says in that earlier scene that like his son said it was great for him. Maybe it would be great for you too. It's also, I mean, the fleshy part of the thigh if you think about it for 1 second, that is your ass. Like, so this is very funny. It's a very funny goof because no one's gonna get more cred by being shot in the ass, and that's exactly what happens later. So, so that's funny and well done. And Bobby wouldn't get that would be a problem. Although you feel like he should, with all their sort of macho machismo they got going on, feels like he should know that you need to shoot a bit lower than that to give that credit. And he does sell himself as a marksman, so should be able to hit his target. He just aimed a little high.
Yeah. Then we have Paulie back at the hospital, and we get a quick shot of Father Phil. He's there. He wants to talk. It's such a great interaction because he's like, "Oh, hey, Paulie, how's Tony doing?" He's like, "A lot better than the nuns you got up there." Like, it's like
it was so great because Father Phil's not in the rest of the episode, is he? So
No.
he just kind of gets told that and kind of goes home, I assume, which is great.
Because it's just great because it's like not like he has any, he has like a passing relationship because they're nuns and he's a priest, but I doubt he has anything to do with that convent or any of those nuns. But to Paulie, he represents it all right there, and he doesn't need that in his life at the moment. Tony's watching Kung Fu with David Carradine, who was also Kill Bill, who also died hanging himself while jerking off. But
Right.
I didn't really quite make this connection, but when I was reading the Sopranos session, it is kind of like a connection to the monks from his dream. And I don't know, it's like Tony kind of remembering it a little bit because he's talking about how, I used to watch this all the time when I was a kid. And I mean, I know he doesn't quite remember his coma stuff, but I don't know if there's kind of something kind of resonating with him here as he's watching this.
Interesting. My takeaway was, what is this show? It looks great. I want to watch it because they got like weird eyes. They're calling each other Grasshopper. I'm like, I've already finished Cobra Kai. I'm waiting on that season 3. Just give me all of this. I might watch that for our next episode. Yeah, it's to see if there's any more layers there. Because have you seen the show? It seems like a cheesy kung fu show.
I mean, I remember it being like a thing when I was real little. And like, people would quote like, "Oh, patience, grasshopper," or there's that line in Pulp Fiction, I think, like, I'm gonna wander the land like Kane in Kung Fu. I think his name's Kane. So I mean, Tarantino obviously a big fan, and I guess it was just kind of like TV like mystical philosophy through Kung Fu. I think the show's just called Kung Fu.
Yes, it seems to be. Well, I will look into that and get back to you, or I won't. We'll see. So Tony gets talking with John Schwinn, who works at Bell Labs, which makes me think of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Everyone go listen to Maisel Men on showswhatyouknow.com. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is a fantastic show. Don't let the name fool you. Just like Gilmore Girls. It's a great show, and we do a podcast on it called Maisel Men, where someone works at Bell Labs. So does this guy. Tony starts calling him like a rocket scientist or whatever, which I think is probably not accurate. But whatever. This character is great, and I don't know. I just love him. I love this guy.
Well, speaking of Gilmore Girls are in this episode when Paulie goes back to his aunt/mom's house and she has the flat screen TV. Gilmore Girls is playing on the TV when he throws it out the window.
Oh, nice. I think I saw that the first time I watched this, but I forgot about it there for the second one. Yeah. Oh, we love Amy Sherman Palladino over here. So go check that out. I promise. I know you like The Sopranos. You're like a cool person who loves gangsters. Go watch Gilmore Girls.
And the Schwinn is played by Hal Holbrook, which is a name I know, but I don't really know a lot about him. I just know he's a famous name I've heard throughout my life. I guess looking at it, he was in The Fog, Creepshow, Wall Street, Men of Honor. He gained international fame for his performance as Deep Throat in All the President's Men. So it's a classic shout out. But he is a great character. He's got a great voice. Oh, yeah. And he's representing a different philosophy for Tony as the episode goes through. And I kind of not to like jump around again, but I wonder how to read it. Like, does Tony kind of see it as he's almost punished for being like a man of science or a man of, I don't want to say chaos, but his whole thing is that like, yeah, everything is everything, and it's only what we perceive in our mind. But then by the end, he gets his larynx taken out and he can't speak and he's in the hospital. So I don't know. I was trying to think of what Tony would read from that, because I almost expected Tony to react more negatively to Pastor Bob when he starts shitting on dinosaurs. But in a weird way, I don't know. I feel like maybe he looks down on Schwinn by the end, and it's like God punishes him for the shit he talks.
I didn't feel that at all. I just felt like it was a way to hit home this feeling he has of he should have been he should have been dead, and like every day is like extra from this point on.
Yeah.
And so and sort of to emphasize that, we have someone who like they're really great at talking and thinking, and you're gonna take away his ability to talk, I assume.
Yeah.
And just as a sort of sign of the random chaotic nature of the universe to sort of make him stop and smell the roses, look up at the leaves and all that, as he does at the end. And just as a, I don't know, maybe a sense of this guy should have been around and I shouldn't have. Maybe there's something there too. I didn't see it as him being pushed towards back towards thinking more of a heaven and hell sort of way anyway.
True. Yeah. I do like this little community they're building of like the people on this floor of the hospital. Because now, like, yeah, the rapper rolls up and, he has them stop, and Tony thanks him for signing a CD for his kid. He calls him the original G.
Yes.
And, invites them over to his room because they get satellite and they're going to be watching the fight. But yeah, like these little neighbors, this little neighborhood that's building here in the hospital.
Yeah, this could be a hospital show that you'd watch, and it would be about the patients rather than the doctors. And yeah, that would be quite interesting. Like you said, he calls him Original G, and Tony's kind of like, yeah, whatever. But I also feel like he kind of likes that he has this respect too,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, of course, I forget if you mentioned it or not, but Tony, because Paulie does mention that Phil is there, and at first he's like, should I bring him up? But Tony, of course, doesn't want Phil to see him in his bed. That's why he has to make this big stance of walking downstairs, and he's even like smoking a cigar, even if it's not quite the best look, because he's still even kind of like shaking a little bit, and it's clearly like he's not 100%. And I like this back and forth that happens because two of the bosses now, one of them's in the hospital, almost died, and the other one is in prison that could probably be out of the picture for a long time. And these underlings are kind of have to deal with it, but there's this, simmering undertone of like, how much longer are we going to get yelled at by these fucking weak ass bitches,
Right. Yes. You meant like Paulie feels that way, or about Tony, or
I don't necessarily feel like Paulie feels that way, but just
like Vito
in general, yeah, whether it be Vito, and then because Phil has to serve as the go-between, and he's kind of getting yelled at by Johnny, and then other people maybe in Tony's crew. It just does. It's just interesting that both of these bosses, they have to emit this image of strength, but they they're in very terrible situations.
Yes. And let's not even get into Junior, who's supposedly still the boss on paper. So Tony relies on Paulie to back him up here. Paulie doesn't. Like, where's Silvio when you need him? Like, get Silvio in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, Paulie's really distracted. And to be fair, yeah, he does get a call and finds out that his biological mother has passed away, which Tony is a bit sort of understanding towards there in the elevator on the way back up. But he kind of talks about like, I wonder, do they have hair up there under those nun robes? Is that what's going on? Paulie clearly doesn't want to talk about it because he's still stewing about the whole thing. And yeah, then we just have the what's it called? The guys who work in an ambulance. What are they called?
Oh, the EMT or paramedic.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say ATM, so that's not right. Well, in this case, it's kind of right, because they want to take out some money.
Well, before we continue, we do need to add I don't even. What was her name? What was Polly's biological mother's name?
Oh shit. Yeah, of course.
Was it? Oh no, Nucci is his aunt slash mom, right?
Correct. Yes.
Uh,
Marinucci.
Let me see. Father Phil. Oh, Aunt Dottie.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yes, that
Okay.
is exactly right. So yeah, I mean that's a legit death. I mean it's
Yes.
an important one, especially for Polly. Let's put it on the boards.
So put it up on the board.
It's even better now that I know where it's from.
Yeah.
So we're at 61 deaths and 16 walkouts still.
And well, and plus going back to Polly getting the news, Tony is still kind of in the dark on the full situation. It's a little bit different than obviously it's horrible if a family member dies, whether it be your aunt or whatever, but someone you recently found out is actually your mother. And I do like I feel for Polly in all these scenes when Tony's kind of yelling at him and like getting annoyed by him.
Yeah.
But it's nice he does like eventually confide in him on what's going on. But Tony is doing, like, on one hand, I'm totally rooting for Tony, like going through this situation, going through his coma dream, kind of rethinking his life and who he is. But there's still that Tony Soprano, because he even like he starts saying the Ojibwe saying to other people, and
Yes.
but he's not putting it to himself at all.
Of course.
He's putting on everyone else. They're all saying "woe is me," when meanwhile I think he even, when he yells at Polly about it, he even says like, "So you're in the hospital with tubes coming out, and you can eat normal food." So there's still that Tony Soprano we know and love there.
Yep. So we get into this scene where they're watching the big fight. And like we said, it's a glorious mix of people in here. The rapper, and there's a couple of girls and his entourage, and then this old scientist guy, John, and Tony, and they're all, and Paulie's there as well, upset, and they're all kind of bullshitting, and like some guy has to hold the satellite dish, and they don't have good reception. And John gets talking about how those two guys fighting there on the screen, they're not different. They're part of the same thing. Tornadoes seems to be one thing, but the wind is just stirred in different directions, etc. And this all really resonates with Tony.
Yes, yeah. It again, it almost reminds me of when they were up at the farm and Tony saw the thing about terrorism. It's starting to reek of like, okay, this is Tony's thing now. That's like super important to him, and he wants everyone else to be concerned with what he's concerned about. But there's some hope there. There's some hope that maybe things are getting through to him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like you could easily mangle this guy's quote next episode and tell someone like, "You ever think about you just like molecules or whatever?" And then they go, "What?" And then he shoots him. That's a thing that could easily happen. So yeah, we have
We quickly, I mean, it's a quick thing, but we should call out that AJ got a job at Blockbuster.
Right.
Carmela apologized. They seem to be on better terms. And then you did mention the paramedic and the wallet biopsy. Now, clearly, the guy never stole money from Tony. This is just his weird, like, revenge on the fact that on the system, right? That they're asking for $2,000 from him.
Oh yeah, because I don't like. I'm very on the outside of how this works. Of like, you have to find proof of insurance and all this. It's very American. I don't really follow it, so I trust it to your analysis, Jim.
Oh, but I'm just saying, like, he did, because Tony's trying to say there was like, he didn't just check for his ID, his insurance. He actually stole $2,000 from his wallet. Like, that's what Tony's telling him.
Yeah. That definitely didn't happen.
Yeah.
But just as far as like why he's mad at this guy, should he be? I don't know. I guess not. This is America, you know. I have no idea. It's really hard to tell. But then we get the continuing negotiations. We get a scene in prison with some terms set. We get the scene I mentioned where Tony's really upset, so he throws up all over himself. Not a great look for the boss. And he gets Paulie to go and explain things to Jason, who's really into rowing, I guess. gets him to go and lay things out more clearly that, you know, it's coming out of your ass if you don't sort this out. So then I'm just sort of speeding through here, but then he goes and talks to the guy he's selling it to at the golf course, and he finally slowly starts to understand that he's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, and I do want to say, like, it's another classic example. Like, they're not going to go to battle with, you know, other gangsters for doing a thing that they don't enjoy. They're going to go to this, you know, person who doesn't have much of an out and make him pay for it. And I do also want to call it, there's another example. Like, I love the way they shoot New Jersey. Not that I've been there a bunch, I've been there before, but they always kind of have really good, like, parallels, like, where, you know, there's this nature, but like right next to a freeway, like, because the way he's rowing, like, he's rowing under, like, almost like a freeway bridge or something. And it reminds me of, like, that whenever they have the funerals, it's in that great cemetery, but it's, like, again, like, right near a freeway. I just like how it, you know, kind of clashes, like, nature and city and, you know, Jersey. But yeah, things are finally coming through to Jason that maybe I didn't make the best choices. And then he goes to Chinelli, and he's saying, you know, those are my routes. We shook hands. We shook hands, like, there's some honor there or something. Like, no, we shook hands. That means it's a done deal.
Yeah. I do agree about the location there. It's like a real ugly looking industrial bridge, but then beautiful shots of it, you know?
Yes.
So there's a nice contrast there. So Paulie gets back to the hospital, and Tony's there. You know, some girl came in with burns, and like you said, he's like, what? There's a girl burned in there, and you're only concerned about yourself. Like he loves to do. Like, there's terrorists out there, and you're worried about this, and like, you just found out about that 5 minutes ago. But Paulie does spill the beans and gets to the point of saying, like, his whole life is a joke at his expense, basically. So, you know, that's fun.
Yeah, and he does, I think, literally say, like, who am I? And then, you know, who the fuck is this Russ prick? Because, that's the other. I don't know if they'd ever mentioned in the past if Paulie knew, like, a father or had some sort of father figure that passed away or anything. I don't remember if they mentioned that, but either way, now there's this whole other situation of this other guy that's out there, or probably not anymore, that was his father. But yeah, I mean, I feel for Paulie, and I'm just like, just give him a break, Tony. Seize up on him. Then we see more innocent people facing consequences for their bullshit, as, you know, like, I like that it's just this quick scene, but, you know, having his son be there, it just seems like, on one hand, you feel for them because clearly he's only there because the kid's on vacation from school, and, like, they don't have anyone else to watch him, so he's on his father's, you know, trash job. But then, like, the son's kind of happy, like, he thinks it's fun. He wants to do it all the time. So it's just like quick shorthand, but then he gets fucking the shit beat out of him. And this poor kid has to watch it happen.
Yep. That is, like you said, it's a staple of The Sopranos and of the message behind the show, although David Chase would probably disagree, as he's wont to do. But like, the fact that people make decisions and it doesn't really affect them. The people who are making decisions, they are not the ones affected by them. It's the little people. This is America. And that's the world just in general. So then we have the Gilmore Girls scene, like you said, where Paulie comes in, grabs the TV, throws it out the window. It's a hilarious gag where it falls and someone's just driving past in their automated wheelchair there. So that's fun. $2,000 for a woman I don't even know. Throws it out and says, I think he says, I never want to see you again, and so on.
Yeah, I do love the detail that, like, it's another perfect example of just how funny this show is. And just that someone was like, all right, let's just have a lady, you know, zipping by on her motorized wheelchair, and she won't even react. And, you know, that's a nice little, because it doesn't, I don't feel like it undercuts the scene at all. Like, the big problem sometimes with mixing your drama with humor is sometimes it can pull away. Undercut it, but I don't feel like The Sopranos really does that. They always have a great blend of it, And it's just such a great, like, it's such a small moment, but even when I was rewatching it, I just admired the fact that they did it and it worked so well.
Yeah, I think personally, I feel like that happens a lot in Marvel movies where they have a good moment and then for comedy they just have to undercut it, and like the joke is usually that it is sort of undercut. You build to something and then it sort of punctures it like a balloon, and here it's a separate thing but it builds on it. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, it works here and it doesn't always. It's not easy.
Absolutely. So yeah, he basically cuts her off, and he doesn't want to see her again. And then we have Jason back with Tony and Paulie, and now it's Chanelli's not going to budge. Oh, and they're blaming him because they're like, this poor guy got beat up in front of his kid, and it's your fault. So like, yeah, it's Jason's fault, and they're yelling at him. Oh, and then I think Tony makes some comments like, you're worse than my kid. I don't want to see this. Get him the fuck out of here, because he's saying like fair. He's like, this isn't fair, which is, I know a lot of people will say that, and Tony's giving the answer you give to some people, like, oh, life isn't fair. But what he's saying is literally not fair.
This is true. And I love that Paulie's taking out his aggression on this guy when he's leading him out, like, but how was I supposed to know? My family didn't tell me about any of this. And he's like, don't you communicate in your family? Throwing him out. I just love it because he has all this extra anger, and so does Tony. And it's really like none of it's really about this. Another comical scene where our secondary rapper, the guy who's not X-Lax, OPP, shows up with Bobby, hands him 7,000, haggles him down for a quick bullet to the ass, and you blame it on Dr. Droop or whoever.
Dr. Droop.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to know when it's coming. You decide.
Yeah, which would make sense. I wouldn't want to know. Just shoot me, and make sure you use your marksman skills, and we'll handle this. Oh, and the next scene's great too. Another funny moment when Tony is reading his dinosaur book, and Christopher's just reading some magazine, whatever. And Tony's like, that they're saying that in the history of the world was the Empire State Building, that human beings would only be like a postage at the top. And then Chris is just like, I don't agree with that. I get his back phrasing, but he just looks at him. He's like, I reject that idea.
Well, no, yeah, he says, do you realize how insignificant that makes us? And yeah, I kind of respect the response of like, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like we're insignificant just because of that. Which, you could read as a greater philosophical argument of humans and our ability to interact with the world and be cognizant about things and make podcasts. But I think in this case, it's literally just like, no, I'm important. I'm the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Hesh rolls through, and I believe that's with his daughter, or because they're mentioning the guy that we saw to get the shit kicked out of him in an earlier episode this season, because they thought it was someone else. That whole deal with Hesh in New York or whatever. Pastor Bob rolls through, and more talk about. He gives them a book called Born Again, and more talk about spirituality and God. But this is where he kind of starts to show the seams a little bit when he's like, yeah, dinosaurs and people, they live together. The Earth's only 6,000 years old. And I like I said earlier, I'm kind of surprised. Like, I almost expect Tony to lash out and be like, oh, you fucking idiot, get out of here. But I don't know. He kind of lets him say his thing.
Yeah. What I felt from this was, like I said, I kind of went into it earlier, that Tony's a bit more open to this earlier, and then it's almost like a relief for him mentally when this guy shows that, oh no, I'm actually a piece of shit. And Tony's like, I knew you were a piece of shit. Everyone's a piece of shit. I'm relieved that I don't have to, submit to your authority. But I think that's also partially because he's found like a thing he's excited about at the moment. So sometimes I swear he's probably like, really worried about God and all this stuff. And then he's like, we're all just molecules. And that's what he's going to think now for a while until he changes his mind again. But for the moment anyway, it is kind of comical. And again, this is, no offense, looking in at America, this is absurd that someone would sit and say these things. It's ridiculous. So it just enhances this feeling when he says it with these crazy eyes like, God created the Earth 6,000 years ago. And I tell my kids, you have to remember, dinosaurs and human beings lived on the Earth at the same time. What is this sentence like? You have to
Yeah.
remember that. Like it's just it would be a clunky line, except he delivers it with such sort of hilarity that I don't mind it at all. But it is such an absurd thing to say. Like you said, you can imagine Tony lashing out about it, but he's settling into this zen state that he is in towards the end of the episode. So it makes sense that he would just let it go.
And then Christopher with so what's he saying? That dinosaurs were there with Adam and Eve?
Yeah,
And
which is a great question.
and Tony's like, I guess so. And he's like, no, they would just be running all day, but they're supposed to be in paradise. I don't quite know what to read on, because then Hesh's daughter is like, the evangelicals are friends of the Jews because of what, Jerusalem or Israel or something like that. And then Hesh just goes, just you wait. And then like it kind of fades out. I didn't quite have a read on that. Maybe I don't know enough about Israel and Jews or whatever, but I don't know.
I just felt like it was, just an extra pinch of pessimism, as if this show didn't have enough of saying that evangelicals and anyone in general, they're just going to be your friend while it's convenient for them, and especially for, persecuted peoples, but also just in general, like, yeah, of course they're our friends right now because they benefit from it. Like, that's how friendship works, and that's Hesh's point of view on the situation.
That makes sense. I like that. I like that read.
Yeah. So now Tony goes to his new priest, John, and he repeats the saying of, like, sometimes we go around feeling pity, behind our back is a great wind carrying us. And yeah, John's on board with this. John likes to talk. Which is, a shame.
Well, and I mean, because this is kind of where we hear the some of the clip from the open, because Tony does mention, he felt like he was being pulled somewhere, and he doesn't want to go back. And then he does mention, Pastor Bob would say that you're going to hell, and Schwinn's like, hey, maybe he's right, because they found that he's got cancer or something. And he makes the joke of like, oh, maybe you could whack me.
Yeah.
And Tony doesn't always enjoy when like outsiders make jokes about how he's a mobster.
Yeah, I think because he's trying to have a different kind of moment here and a kind of connection, so he looks a little bit sad about it. But yeah, John's kind of like, sorry, bad joke, and they get along fine. I feel like this is basically same thing he did to Hesh, where he just like needs therapy. Whenever he doesn't go to therapy, he needs to find someone else to talk about his whole thing. So that's kind of what he's doing here.
Absolutely. So then after that, he has to walk back to the room by himself, because he mentions how Vito takes like an hour and a half long shits, because he was walking in the hall with Vito initially, and then he goes back to Paulie. And I believe this is the scene when he throws the line at Paulie of, you go along with pity for yourself. And I love when Tony uses a line on someone else that's kind of meant for him, or that he's thinking about. It's great, but also, he's kind of got a point. Like he means well with what he's trying to say, because I do like when he's talking about how she's still your mother, and he's trying to like get that through to him, but he's doing it in a Tony way that's not always great.
Yeah. But I do like our read that it does get through to him, and then maybe he does. Although even though it leads to Jason just getting the shit kicked out of him and having to pay loads of money, it still is a nice thought underneath there somewhere.
Oh, and it was earlier in the episode, but I guess I don't know if I noticed or thought, or if they even mentioned, because they do mention that Paulie's got a brother and sister.
Yeah.
And he brings it up to his mom when he's saying he's not fitting the bill anymore. It is interesting that he was the one that was taking care of her, and these other two just kind of fucking took off. And I going back to that earlier scene too, I do love when he says, I went without so you could have, because it's like heartbreaking to me. Because poor Paulie, like he does kind of go, he's clipping his coupons and doing whatever. It's not easy for him to just give his money or his valuables for other people. And then I lost my train of thought on here because I was just seeing. Fuck it. I had another thought, but I lost it.
Okay. Yeah. So then, like you said, it probably gets through to him there. We get the rapper gets shot. Marvin.
I'm sorry. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, he brings up Livia, and that's always a very testy thing to do in front of Tony. He doesn't quite react fully, but he doesn't want to hear about it clearly because Tony's given him the speech of how Paulie doesn't realize how good he has it, but Paulie tries to come back with well, hey, at least maybe you and your mom weren't the best, but at least she was your ma. But then again, she did try to have him killed.
Yeah, so not great. So the rapper gets shot. We already talked about that. Very funny. Tony is then in his hospital bed again, I think fantasizing about what he's going to eat. And Carmilla's there. And I kind of really like this where Carmilla is sort of thinking, looking out the window, and brings up out of nowhere that whole package she got. She says, I have to believe that there was more there. Does that just mean that she thinks they got shortchanged on the cut? Is that what that means?
I think so. Yeah, I think she's second guessing what they kicked up.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And she says, Vito, especially someone you should watch. And I just kind of love this Breaking Bad feel I get from this, where she's kind of like starting to think a little bit what's going on in this game and says correctly, Vito is especially someone you should watch. Which is very much correct. And she's wearing sort of a snazzy business outfit while he's in bed. And I'm like, yeah, Sopranos power couple. Here we go. Season 6. Let's do this.
Hell yeah. Then, the insurance lady comes back in and, hey, here's the good news. You get to go home. And like, oh, are you sure? But yeah, I guess it's good. He does ask her about Schwinn and she tells him. I don't know if that's something that could actually happen, where you could just ask about somebody and they tell you what happened with their surgery.
Definitely shouldn't happen.
Not
with GDPR.
Yeah, we don't need to have this big elongated thing of how he figures out. You just have her give the line. Oh, I heard. I think they took his larynx out. See ya. Bye now.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if he isn't a client of hers or like with their insurance company or whatever, then she has no legal like prerogative to keep what she knows to herself if it's just something she heard in passing. But it is very unprofessional. Either way, we have the next scene where Jason's mother comes and basically begs for him, even though Tony's kind of like, what? No, he's fine. Like, I'm annoyed with him, but like, I'm not gonna do anything to him. Like, he's family or whatever. Not that he is family, but still. And yeah, it really gets to Paulie, goes outside, has a bit of a weep.
It's interesting the way they shoot it because like the TV's like right over his shoulder. Like when it kind of cuts to his close up. I mean, there's nothing really that I noticed of value. I mean, I guess like a Western or something is playing over his shoulder, but I just thought it was like an interesting shot because it looks like kind of weird. But yeah, he has to kind of leave the room because he gets very emotional seeing a mother that would, put herself on the line for her son, which maybe part of it too is even if he does it, he feels like his life is a lie. I feel like Nucci would do something like that for Paulie, even still. So I don't know if maybe that's part of what's knocking around in his head here.
Yeah, that could be it. So I want to hurry through the rest of these scenes just because we've already touched on the end of the storylines there. But Tony is getting wheeled out of there, decides not to say bye, probably because it's just depressing enough. And the guy's presumably wife is there too. And it would, to be fair to Tony, it's not just him being a dick. It's kind of also like it would be awkward and weird and like he doesn't need to, but it's also kind of rude. But I don't know. It's like we were like two ships passing in the night in this hospital. It can't continue after this anyway. So I'll just do the old Irish goodbye.
Yeah. Then when he's out, like we said, he lets the EMT guy off the hook, even though, he was in the wrong completely anyways.
Yep.
And then Tony has this moment outside where he's really taking in, because now you're, the sound design's great because you're really starting to pick up just the world. Yeah. And it's always, I was just thinking about, you know, it's just that moment of like, maybe this isn't what Tony's picking up, but when you're having your worst day of your life, the world's still going on. Like nothing's changing. People are still going to their work, whatever. I mean, in this moment, he's taking it as a gift, and he does basically tell Janice that, every day is a gift. She doesn't quite react too much to it. I don't know if there's much to read there or not. Or the Sopranos session kind of gets into like, oh, Janice knows that this is temporary, and she understands that way Tony. And I don't know if there's that much there, but I guess it's an interesting take on it.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. And yeah, like you said, the sound design here and just the look of it. And even though I've never been shot by my uncle or anyone else, as far as you need to know, I still have had moments, and I think everyone has, where you're just kind of more than usually taking in what's around you. Maybe it's just because you've had a nap and you wake up and you're like, what the fuck is going on around me? And especially like looking up at leaves as he's doing later, but like this as well, just kind of looking around and being surprised by everything around you. And I do love the way that that's presented here. And also later there, after his scene where he accepts the deal when he goes outside. And it's of course a great cut too. I mean, you gotta give props to that cut.
It's great,
right? So good.
It's so great because you're in Tony's point of view, but then you're not, because then when Jason comes kind of trotting in with his I don't know, toboggan, whatever the fuck it is. And I mean, it's a good callback to when he's outside. What is it? The inn when he was in his coma dream. The inn at the Oaks. When he's outside the inn at the Oaks, and it's kind of doing the same camera move in the wind's blowing through the trees, and he hears Meadow, and then we kind of have this camera move here, and the wind's blowing through the trees, but we reveal we're with Jason. And again, kind of going back to what we were talking about at the start of the episode, we get a quick shot of Polly, then right to Tony, and now we're getting that same thing here. We have two guys that kind of don't know who they are, and going on their own paths because of that.
And it's great the way it cuts to Jason and Polly beating the shit out of him and threatening him and saying, don't ever tell Tony or you'll die. And then we cut back to Tony being totally unaware of any of this, still there, still like serene, looking up at those trees, just to hit home this point of like that we've seen over and over, that it's the innocents that get hurt in all of this, and Tony isn't even going to know that this is happening, even though he's obviously involved and it's basically his fault, and he's just looking at these leaves, man.
And he's kind of got like a grin on his face almost, like this day is a gift and he's happy, and maybe things will change, but I also feel like the way it's cut to, it does show that probably not.
Yes.
Probably won't.
It definitely won't. So really solid episode, I think. It's been weird because we've had a larger break than usual, so the rhythm of the season is a bit off for me. But I have to remind myself we're still at the start of season 6, and now that we're past this bit, I honestly cannot guess for the life of me what comes next. Because this has been the season so far. Like, there was some other stuff in the first episode or whatever with Sushi, and that's been totally irrelevant because Junior shot him, and that's been the focus ever since. But I feel like we're getting past that. Tony's getting past that. Is he going to change due to this, or is Janice right? Is it completely temporary? I can't wait to find out and see what happens next on The Sopranos.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I hope we didn't scare you away with our break, but we're gonna be back doing as best we can. Maybe every now and then we might have an off week, but we're gonna truck on down to the ending of The Sopranos. We're with you, so hope you're with us as well. And as we read at the top of the show, we did get a review, so we do appreciate that. If you go to Cut to Black Sopranos Sit Down on Apple Podcasts, or if you use another podcaster that does accept reviews, please rate and review, subscribe, and you can send us your thoughts to showswhatyouknow@gmail.com.
I think that about covers it. I did want to mention, though, we have hinted at before, we have a new show called Blank Meets Blank that you can find at showswhatyouknow.com. On that podcast, we basically come up with ideas for television shows. So every episode, we draw 2 random things, and based on that, in just an hour, we come up with an idea, a pilot, a story structure for a whole new television show. Usually a quite ridiculous one, but it's so much fun to do. And we have the first episode out right now where we mash up Die Hard with the concept of fake news and arrive at something quite strange and I think quite wonderful. And you can find that at showswhatyouknow.com or just search Blank Meets Blank on your podcatcher of choice. And please do rate and review that as well if you do enjoy that show.
And I hope people weren't annoyed if it popped up on your Cut the Black feed. I imagine it wouldn't be annoying, but maybe it'd be a little annoying, but I hope you still enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, maybe if you don't do a show for a month and then you release a different show. All right. Well, don't give it. If you didn't enjoy it, don't go and rate and review. But I'm just saying, if you liked it, yeah, give it a chance. I think it's really good. I think it's one of the better things we've done. Anyway, that's it for this week. There's just one more thing to say, Jim.
Oh, what's that?
Cut to black.
There we go. Now we're out.
Yeah.